What's happening, everybody? Of course, it's your host, Brink Young, coming straight out of them South Memphis slums, and you are listening to Brink Radio right here on 96.3 FM. I'm talking about bumping 96.3 because you know Brink put the B in bumping, right? Of course you do. Look, we got an extremely special guest on tonight's show. We're talking about none other than Mr. Judge Joe Brown. How you doing, sir?
All right, the judge is in the house. Another B to come in with the bump and Brink.
I love it.
Brown is here.
I promise, man. We're talking about JJB in 2023, sent Brown downtown. Is that correct?
That's it. Take back your town.
All right, so I understand that you're actually running for Mayor of Memphis. Let's talk about that, man. What do you have to say about it?
Okay, qualification petition has been filed. It's satisfactory, and treasurer has been officially appointed some time ago and recently approved. So, yeah, we're running. It's time to take back the town. We've got a massive dose of incompetence that is built up, and the people that have been running it just frankly don't know what they're doing. And the solutions I've heard from most of my opponents are non-solutions and actually most likely parts of the problem. I just noticed I was disgruntled, let's put it that way, with a questionnaire I got from a group asking me to write out basically long essays on my response to these particular programs. The programs are useless and don't do anything. They haven't and they won't. There are some things that I have planned to do, and these questions don't even approach those plans. So, yeah.
All right, so one thing I got to talk about, because a lot of times people have a preconceived notion of what a mayor can do. Sometimes people think all kind of outlandish things. It's too hot outside. I need the mayor to do something about this. What can a mayor do?
Well, I'll tell you what the most important thing is: lead. In other words, there are people out in this town. Somebody needs to go out and inspire them. Look, we can do this. We got to work together. I have some plans. Let me lay them out for you. We need to come in. Let's move it. I was on Tate Street a few weeks back, and the Tate Street adults who were legal to do so had armed up because, as they said, the police can't protect us, and we've got too many shootings, so we're going to defend ourselves. And they had a block party. One of my candidates showed up in uniform with a deputy in uniform, gun on hip, stood up front, arms folded, looking very uncomfortable at the armed adults. And it developed that 4 juveniles between, I think it was 13 and about 16, showed up with pistols stuck down the front of their pants, and somebody was just trying to ignore this. I went over and talked to them, flagged a couple of the armed adults over, and we cleared the problem up, sent them home to drop the hardware. See, that's leadership. What you saw offering himself for leadership was not leadership. That's sitting behind a desk. We need people to go out and say, follow me. But frankly, the leadership in this city is, well, let's assume there was a massive problem with diarrhea and toilet paper shortage. The people that hold themselves out for leadership in this city, for the most part, couldn't get a bunch of people suffering from massive cases of the runs to follow them to porta potties well stocked with toilet paper. So that's about the state of the leadership. You have to lead. You get the people to be inspired. You get the youth to say there's a better way to deal with this. This is adversity. It's my challenge. I can take this on. I can whip it. I can make where I am a better, safer, more secure place, filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics. I can be a man or woman of public peace, dignity, and order who can be brave and courageous when necessary. I can do it. So instead of giving up hope, you just have a bigger challenge. In other words, we're going to win this game. Whether it's football, baseball, basketball, I don't care, or life.
Yeah.
So you can look in the mirror every morning and say, hey, did you do what you're supposed to do yesterday? You're going to do it today. You're going to prepare to do it better tomorrow. So people don't give up when they have that kind of outlook on life. And just twice this morning I ran into people who walked up and said they'd been in my court and I dealt with them. But you see, I didn't just sentence people. They had to come to my counseling sessions, which were in a room with the doors locked, no bat cape on, no tie, casual. And we got basic, we cussed and we talked about some things, and the facts of life got brought out. So when that got out, I also had some plans for them. You have unions around here that can be recruited to give vocational training. They don't have to worry about competition because the trainees become dues-paying apprentices and loyal union members. The unions can start that thing they used to do again, where they'd have people coming in and cluing their membership on what's going on really with politics and social issues. We have a way of getting out there and bringing in industry if somebody ever thought about it. We have the world's largest barge loading facility on President's Island. This little rinky airport over here, rinky dinky thing, is in fact #1 in the whole world in commercial tonnage. Second place is Hong Kong Airport, and it's half the commercial tonnage. We come out couple of million tons a year that we ship out of that place. Hong Kong has somewhere around a little over 1 million. So it is a massive place when it comes to distribution, and we can bring stuff in. Europe wants to get directly here to Memphis, so they bypass the eastern seaboard where there's no need to worry about pilferage, expensive storage facilities. Once they get the containers off the ship, they have the option of, instead of loading containers that are unique to America that they have to deal with over there when they want to ship here, and they have these other kind of units that they can load up for trucks, planes, trains, and barges, and load the barges over there, put them on ocean-going barge transports, get them to New Orleans, drop the rear hatch, float them out, come up the Mississippi to President's Island, unload them, and they're right here 4.6 miles from the geographic center of the distribution center for the United States, Canada, and Mexico. They'd love to get in here, and if you're just at the distribution point, why not make your goods here?
Yeah.
Well, you need energy for that, so we've got this mighty Mississippi River that flows 24/7. It's going nowhere, I'm told, in the next 1.5 million years. So they've got 220-foot deep channels down there, and most harbors around the world are around 35-40 foot when it comes to depth in the harbors, so it's navigable. But what that means is you have ample opportunity to take modular hydroelectric generators that they use in Asia and Africa. They look like large outboard motors. And instead of a small propeller, you got a big one. It's in the water. It spins around in the current, drives the shaft up to a dynamo where the engine on an outboard would be, and you just hook it up with the cables to your net. And you will have a surplus that you can sell from New Orleans to Louisville to Chicago to Little Rock to Atlanta and all points in between. And meanwhile, we can get some solar farms set up on top of the roofs of all city buildings, the schools that are located in the city, any new construction of a commercial type, and some of the money that the city wastes on giving away to certain interests, that can be used to subsidize the placement of these solar farms on the roofs of all new development or reconstruction. We can get rid of this expensive mess with TVA and Steve Cohen's buddy who wanted to sell us some more expensive nonsense, and it would basically be free industry but for the maintenance. We could expand MATA so that the transportation fare would be very cheap. We could get 6 times as many buses in the long run, electric buses with plug-in facilities right here. You've got Ford making nothing but electric cars. up here where Mason is right now, and they're trying to take that over, and some of our local crooks are trying to facilitate conning those folk that live up there into surrendering their city charters so Tipton County can take it over and Ford can convert the area to Blue Oval City. But to see what the scam's about, Mayor of Tipton County bought 550 acres where the new center's supposed to be on inside information. One of the candidates for mayor is trying to hustle up there and scam the people by acquiring properties that the Tipton County folk are going to let him and some others have for dirt cheap so they can deal with this. Our governor has a financial interest, a big one, in the company that's supposed to make the parts for the batteries to be used, and the comptroller has been promised stuff, so he and the current mayor of the county are down here, and there's a certain office that's a constitutional office that's been having financial problems that will probably be shown to be the result of some dipping in those accounts that should not happen by certain people that are trying to get this. You've got clowns downtown that claim that the skyline downtown is the most important thing, so we've committed to $250 million to financing a major international hotel chain to do renovations down there. We sold 25 acres centered on where the Greyhound bus depot used to be, right across from the Redbird station. It's a lot now. And we sold that to a developer for just $600K. It's worth about $60 million, but we sold it for $600K and then committed $250 million of tax money to develop a project that's supposed to have 28 luxury units and some affiliated upscale boutiques. Oh wow, well we can all go shop at the boutiques. No, because city council is considering further restrictions on parking, so the only time you can get a parking space downtown is if you live down there or you work down there. And you see all of those office buildings, but what most people don't realize is they've been renovated, and instead of having all those tenants that you think are in these offices and all these floors, you got 5 or 6 tenants in the whole building, and the whole interior has been gutted and turned into multi-level condos. So
wow.
What in the devil is that? Who does that benefit? We don't need a gentrified downtown, and then for the ordinary business, you're supposed to park at somebody's lot out here at the fairgrounds, near the fairgrounds, and get transportation downtown. Meanwhile, fairgrounds, we've got a football or a stadium. Strickland has committed almost $750 million to changing that football stadium into a soccer arena, and then another $3.5 billion to build a new football field. Potholes need to be filled. Trash is making this place look like a dumpster. And you want to spend that for that kind of thing?
Wow.
And then look at what's going on down there, Airways or Parkway, rather, East Parkway, where you get over there past the fairgrounds near the zoo and Overton Square. What is that? That's I can't.
Over there by Central? Or?
The freeway that runs down to East Parkway, Sam Cooper Boulevard.
Okay, Sam Cooper.
And you see all the new apartments going up there? Well, there's fraud involved in that because some people don't have to go through the zoning process. They just go a few things under the table to the city council and they get written a zoning variance, and then also the city puts money into it. And there's a big waste of city money that goes into certain individuals or entities get zoning variances. They get paid by the city to build certain things. They get paid by the city to provide the materials, and the city is supposed to get 4% of their net when they operate, maybe 6%. And what happens is the accountants just zero it out. So we're paying for people. There's a lot of money. I just read something and it's presuming that what they see published is in fact the case. It's not. The amounts are way understated. The city council has budgeted for operating costs $781 million, but that doesn't count the other 6 or 7 billion that are long-term investments in these select entities that get the benefit of our tax dollars while we don't. The school system, what with the COVID-19 relief funds from the feds, has just shy of $3 billion in its budget to be used for operating costs. But they fired most all of the senior teachers that they could find a few years ago that were getting 80, 90, 100 grand a year because they had demonstrated over a long time they were excellent teachers, master's degrees, PhDs, and they've been replaced by those who don't have to have a 4-year college degree anymore.
Wow.
And they start off at $28,000 to $32,000 a year with no benefits. That's poverty.
Who can live off of that, man?
Teacher you're gonna get.
Yeah.
Now I'm running into teachers that live in, duplexes, little shacks, down in the hood, which is good to mingle with the students and their parent or whatever, but they can't afford anything. I mean, that's a shame for a teacher.
Yeah.
We don't send the kids to school much, and we get them there in elementary school so early that they're falling asleep until about 10 o'clock in the morning. They aren't paying attention. The high school students are getting out at 2:30, and the parent doesn't get home till 6 o'clock.
Correct.
And they're hanging out in malls and causing trouble, and there's no programs for them and no hope, and they clown and carry on, and nobody's watching them.
Yeah, and that would be a excellent segue to some numbers. I actually saw that from January to June of this year, there was over 7,000 car thefts, and that doubles January to June last year.
Yeah.
How would you speak to that as a mayoral candidate?
We'll stop it.
Okay.
See, go out to Cordova, go out to Collierville, go out to Germantown. One side of the street's Memphis, and one side of the street is those places. It doesn't happen out there.
Correct.
Why? And the answer stares you in the face, because the police departments out there have a mission and they're effectively run. This police department is incompetently run because by law the mayor technically is ahead of the whole thing. And the Pillsbury Doughboy, Strickland down there, is not capable of running the police department. He has no clue as to what it does. He doesn't know what the criminal justice system is about because he never got over there to practice any. And you've got a bunch of people walking around with no clues. Now, Bonner is the sheriff, but I remember when Bonner started, I was handling major violators and habitual offenders as a part-time PD because my law partner was the head public defender. And I'd been the head public defender back in the 70s, also the first black prosecutor the city ever hired. So, yeah, all right, I get the idea of how this is supposed to work, but these folk don't. And the other thing is gangs have infiltrated the sheriff's department, the police department. It's out of control. Nobody knows what to do. But I've been meeting with some of the OGs from the street gangs to broker public peace. Yep. They can't do that. Now, that's nothing new for me. I forgot about that. Almost 15 years ago, a certain prime minister down in the islands wanted me to come down there and talk to the youth. I forgot youth in the Caribbean doesn't go up to 18. It starts at 18 and goes to 30. It goes to 35.
Wow.
So I'm sitting there and there's a guy with a Sten submachine gun at the door of this restaurant. The guy sitting next to me is going, Judge Brown, the person to your left is the contract on my life. He want to kill me, and I got one on his life. I'm going to kill him if we don't work these out. But we bring you here, man, so you can negotiate a peace with us, with the Prime Minister. Prime Minister had his little crooked enterprises he was gaming off, and he had double-crossed the gangs that had delivered the election to his party, and all they wanted was an expungement of their juvenile records. That was the deal. So they said there's no point in killing over the crumbs when there's a whole cake for everybody to share.
Facts.
So that kind of thing I've done before. I grew up in South Central LA, but that's been a half century since I left there and moved to Memphis.
Can we dive into that? Because I remember you telling me a story about, being around Barry White and Stanley T. Williams. Can you deal with that?
See, myself and a guy named Ron Chappelle and a guy named Cliff Stewart, the three of us ran a playground.
Okay.
We had a beautiful sister, Tracy Reed, who was actress, and another one, Vivian Parker, and we couldn't get anybody else to volunteer to come down there. So the five of us ran this playground down in the worst part of Los Angeles. This was called Trinity Avenue Elementary School. I mean, there was all kinds of stuff going on. Like, it became Dr. Stewart and Dr. Chappelle and Dr. Brown later. But, like, out there, all schools have chain link fences 9 feet high with concertina wire at the top and lockable gates. So one time, LAPD was coming up in there and hassling with the kids. So Cliff took one of these big case chains and padlocked the squad cars in there. So, we had a big hot meeting that got violent. People were punching it out, cops and community members in this auditorium. But we got that worked out, and what I was talking about there is one of our kids that I remembered first as a skinny 12-year-old was the future Barry White. We got his mama to listen, and he got out of the hood. The other one was the last person executed in California. He was a 14-year-old volunteer, and he co-founded the LA Crips. That was Tookie Williams. We couldn't get his mama to get up off I Want the Check, so we couldn't get him out of the swamp. But as Dr. Stewart said, he just became the baddest alligator in the swamp. So how did we get this respect? Well, we were all in the martial arts. I was in the shooting, and we'd put these demonstrations on, and Cliff wound up, well, let's see, he had a black belt in judo, one in jiu-jitsu. He was a kung fu grandmaster before he died. He had 14 karate black belts, 10th Dan in 9 of them. He had his interesting thing. He was a pendecker for Penyat Silat, which is an Indonesian form, and you become a pendecker because the Indonesian government awards you that title. There are only 3 in the whole world. When he died, and the other 2 were over 90. So he also had Within Arm's Reach, aka War, and that's some freaky stuff. He taught it to Special Ops, and 5 of the members of SEAL Team 6 on the Bin Laden raid were his students. And let's see, he did contract work for British MI6, that's James Bond's, for Mossad, French intelligence. The CIA came to the studio every few weeks. Cliff was also, I had him in as co-executive producer to keep things sane out there. They're kind of like, who is Superman? And he was an extraordinary individual. So was Chappelle, and we impressed the neighborhood, so they went along with the program. So we didn't have that of unruly kids. It's like, you better do what they say. There ain't nobody in the neighborhood can take them on. You better do it. So we had all of the gangsters and ex-gang members and bank robbers and all this kind of stuff. They collaborated on making sure that everything was peaceful on that playground. And to show you what you can do with it and the lessons that were learned, we had a special program where every Wednesday we take 200 kids from 1st grade to 7th grade downtown LA to movie houses, because there were none in South Central. So we had UCLA hook up to provide the transportation. So it was just 3 guys, me, Ron, and Cliff. And we'd have 200 kids, and they'd be so quiet that the patrons of the movie house didn't even know they were down there. And they say, hey, you can come in free all you want. Well, we did that until we talked to a distributor, and he says, yeah, you guys, I'll let you have all the movies you want. All you need is a licensed projectionist. And Ron just happened to be the only black licensed projectionist in the whole state of California for his card out flip. He said, you guys tricked me. Yeah, we kind of sort of did. So we converted the school auditorium into a movie house, so we showed movies 5 days a week. We got places to donate hot dogs, and we sold those and soda, and we even got a radio station, and I was the DJ. I ran that by you last time, you know. Mommy, yo, daddy, yo, this is JoJo coming to you on the show, you know. We went into that. It wasn't powerful, but we reached a few blocks. So these are the kind of things that just some young 20-year-old guys can get together with the neighborhood cooperation. And I extended on that when I was on the bench. So I was going out and checking with people in the neighborhood, what's going on, what needs to be cleaned up. Well, I've got 17 people I just assigned to probation that have community service. They'll be out here. Trash got picked up on the freeways. Captain so-and-so, you know, would you do me a favor and identify the areas that need cleaning up in your precinct? I've got some volunteers for you. Well, not really volunteers, but they'll be there. Yeah. And I'd go out and watch them. And the bottom line is, I'm out here picking it up. You better hustle. Yeah. Or guess what? Well, I'm tired. I said, well, you get plenty of rest, because if you don't hustle it up, in the next 5 minutes, you're coming to see me on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. You're going to get some sit-down time.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, I forgot you the judge, ain't you? Yeah, that's right. And see, I used to go out and walk the neighborhoods, all of the old projects before they tore them down. Yeah. And hey, man, come here. Man, who you? Oh, didn't I tell you you had a 10 o'clock curfew? 11:47. What are you doing out here? Well, you see me tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Man, what you talking about? I didn't ask you, fool. You know, this is A&B conversation, but if you want to see what the lecture he's going to get an extension of is, you can stand here. So it's 11:45 going on 12 o'clock. Sun's coming up, and I got 18, 19 wannabe thugs out there, and they're listening and hanging on to every word about how to be a man. Yeah. See, you get tested. If you survive the test, then you get listened to.
Correct.
But these guys are sitting down at the Peabody. Oh, Thomas, what do you think's going on? Pass those little pink wafers. They're so good. Oh, I just love that cheese. Yes. Is that chives they have in them? And TJ, what do you think? Jamal, Sean, you know, and that's how the business in Memphis gets handled. You go down to the Peabody, you can see them waiting on the ducks to come walk through the lobby. You know, like, damn, man, there's stuff out there. Get off your behind, go do some work. Well, we're going to appoint a committee to study this. Oh, so in other words, you don't have a damn clue. So you're going to get another committee full of folks who don't have a clue to do a study run by some bureaucrats, and you're going to get city council to put some money in a bowl, which is going to have a lot of petty cash that you and your homies are going to steal. Not homies, they wouldn't call them that. It would look sort of like, honestly, government in Memphis kind of looks like those cotillion scenes you see in Atlanta Housewives, where all the posers are going around trying to act like they know something they don't. Oh yes, did you hear that on Channel 3 about so-and-so? Yes, I did. And, you know, well, come on now, they don't know either, so.
Hey, we got a whole bunch more. Do not move. We right here at Brink Radio 96.3. We're going to be back with more Judge Joe Brown. Don't move. We got Judge Joe Brown in the building. We got to talk about these potholes, Judge Joe Brown. What's going on with all these potholes? I hit a pothole, I almost thought I was in a whole nother country. What happened, man?
I've had to get 2 new tires, a new wheel revised on a car. I've got a fan under one that has been wrecked from road debris. It's a shame. I actually was talking about that and somebody started crying in the audience, and I wanted to see what was going on. She lost a son who hit a pothole, swerved into an oncoming traffic lane, and 2 people died from the head-on collision. See, this is serious stuff. We have been stealing the money, and I don't mean me, I mean our government. And instead of putting it into restoration of infrastructure, potholes need to be fixed, streets need to be fixed, some of the people need to be checked out, and the city needs to drop some boreholes down to see if the foundation for these roads is adequate. You know, you go down 55, and then you get to Mississippi, because it's smooth. Same road. They followed the rules in Mississippi. They didn't over here. Let's find out who and snatch some people in the court, try to get some folk prosecuted if we can't get the money back. Meanwhile, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water used to belong to the city. Some idiots got the idea some decades ago to make instant profit on the thing by divesting the city of the interest in Memphis Light, Gas, and Water and privatizing it. Well, the problem is when you have something like that, it's not just cost to operate it, it's cost plus profit. So in the name of maximizing profit, the infrastructure has been allowed to deteriorate, and it has not been rebuilt, built back up in the last 40-some years, and it's gone to hell. You can't even take your dog out for a walk because the dog tinkles on the sidewalk. Memphis Light, Gas, and Water will break down. Hell, I've had outages in the last month, 21 hours, 23 hours in one instance, 14 in one, 6, 4, 3, 3 in 2. That's inexcusable. Now, somebody needs to do something about, bringing somebody into court for fraud. The city needs to sue Memphis Light, Gas, and Water for fraud on not delivering under its contract to provide services, for not providing infrastructure, repair and maintenance and restoration. Somebody needs to be sued for malfeasance for allowing that to be happening, and we can do it. Meanwhile, we've got a city attorney's office that needs to be put to good work, but like the county board of education, maybe we need to look at what they're doing out there, because we don't get our return on our investment in our children's education with the county. We need to go against them for fraud and failure to deliver, and then other stuff too. The county board of education has a county board attorney, a legal staff, but they hire a certain black silk stocking law firm, and they pay them $350, $500, $1,500 an hour for routine office work that we already have a staff that's fully staffed and paid for to do. And when they show up for a hearing, they send down junior flips just out of law school, don't know their hind end from their front side. In my opinion, I've seen them. And they get $3,500 an hour for sitting there. I remember one senior teacher I was trying to help out some years ago, they had 3 of them, so they were getting paid $3,500 an hour times 3 for 3 hours. Why? They had the board attorney sitting in there too. He knew more than they did because they were rookies. They hadn't been out of law school 5 years, but why are we doing that? See, that kind of waste of money. That kind of thing has been going on entirely too long, and that leads to another unfortunate conclusion, which is backed up by another reality. We are the most corrupt large city in the United States. We also are now the murder capital, the rape capital. We are the carjacking capital, and we are the number one city when it comes to serious automobile accidents.
Yeah, I saw something recently saying something about Memphis, like at the worst drivers, ranked worst drivers in the United States.
Yeah, and they're talking about it's too many people driving fast. No, that's not really the problem. Problem is the people can't drive, but 2, One of the things is it's a lack of home training, no courtesy, no respect for what's going on. Too many people out there don't give a damn because they don't see a day after tomorrow, especially the youth. They had a video that they had on social media. Cop was burning donuts in a squad car, and nobody bust them. And does that have anything to do with the attitude, the police department, the mayor's office, and I'll bring it back to that, or the fact that they have televised a series, Street Racing, centered in Memphis, and the city government sponsors that. Now, the cops, some of the young cops are saying that we can do something about it if we got rid of the rule against high-speed chases. Well, you don't need to get rid of that. Just ask Strickland and his predecessor why they cut the money that was supposed to be funding the helicopters that they had. I had the first motion to suppress back in '94 on this when I was on the bench. What happened was there was an armed robbery. It was right out here off of, well, I won't say where it was. It might invite some copycat fool. Anyway, the police got called, so instead of converging on the scene, they were stationed several blocks away on the rear sides of some parking lots. The helicopter switched on its thermal imaging, and you could clearly see somebody. You're looking down at him, and then he moved off for a slant, and you could see the gun up, somebody with a shotgun, and somebody else at the door, and somebody in the car through the roofs. So they put a circle around one, a square around one, a diamond around one, and a star around one using a computer. And they never moved, so you can identify who's doing what. And the helicopter's at 8,000 feet, capable of 150 miles an hour. So they just had a train of squad cars running 4 or 5 blocks on each side. So you could see them speed to get away, and then they slowed down because there was no chase. So when they got where they were going over in North Memphis, helicopters over there, you see the shapes get out of the car, and you see them go in the house, and then they vectored all the cars around. They surrounded the place, and when they go through the front door, you can hear the conversation going on. To your left, there should be a couch there. There are 2 people on the couch. At the end of the couch behind it, look, yeah, we got one. And they got all of them. There was one they were looking for. Said, well, you're right under him. Said, check and see if there's an addict. There was, so they went up there and they got him. They could even see he had a gun, so they drew down on him. He threw the gun down. They got him. So that's why they did not have any high-speed chases, because there was no damn need for it. Now somebody got rid of the helicopter services because they wanted the money for something else. What did they want it for? Garbage, like what they've done that has endangered all of the women in this town. This is the rape capital of America. There are between 12,000 and 28,000 untested rape kits. You can lay that on the shoulders of Emmy, who is a corrupt somebody, as per the state Supreme Court and most of the law reviews and independent reviewers around the country. We had what was ranked as the most corrupt prosecutor in the United States for several years. Now, that aside, why don't they test these kits? Well, about 10 years ago now, the city council voted to give $7.2 million to a New York firm to test them, and to a certain female attorney who used to be an assistant prosecutor and then U.S. attorney, an open-ended contract to vet them. Well, they didn't finish up in the first 5 years, so they gave them an extension. They still haven't finished it. TBI, meanwhile, says, we don't understand what the problem is. We can come in and get it for 30 days. So what has happened as a consequence? Well, remember this thing where that young woman, rich young woman, was jogging around the University of Memphis in the morning. She got kidnapped, brutally raped, tortured, which the press didn't put out, but she was tortured and then murdered. Well, it developed that eventually it came out the suspect did this to another woman, if they had tested the kits, they would have caught him.
Wow.
But you see, that's the kind of mess we have on. But that $7.2 million contract is still out there. And then look at the rest of it. Memphis is Memphis. Memphis Police Department. But Memphis took it on themselves to also do the testing for Collierville, Cordova, Germantown, Millington, Arlington. Why? That should go to the county. That's so they can get more money in a pot that can be stolen or misappropriated. That kind of thing has got to stop. Look what you see when you go down Union Avenue and get to the hospital complex, east, north side of Union. You see that park that used to have Nathan Bedford Forrest in it? Well, one of my opponents, I'll call his name, Van Turner, did some dastardly unethical mess. He's an attorney and ought to know better. He and Tammy Sawyer introduced a resolution to sell that park so they could get rid of the offending Confederate statue. Well, he incorporated a nonprofit that states as its purpose to operate city parks. What happened to the city park department? So they introduced another resolution to sell that park, which is worth about $10 million, to his company for $2,500 no bid. Okay, Tammy Sawyer had a half brother that got paid a whole lot of money for 3 years to store that statue, and then she set up a thing where her people could buy the statue and apparently sell it to a Johnny Reb museum. And now this person Turner owns this nonprofit in Le Bonheur and St. Jude. They're arguing over whether or not there should be a hotel for the parents of some of the children they treat on that location. And the hospitals are saying they want a high-tech, high-rise laboratory, research laboratory. And for this $2,500 property, the discussion is $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a month to be paid for it. Meanwhile, let's talk about that one down there next to the Metal Museum on the bluff that developers want to rent. And his agreement is that you can't sell the thing, so it has to be leased to somebody. So they want to develop it. Another $2,500, another bunches and bunches, thousands of dollars spent to house Jeff Davis. And somebody ethically wants to be mayor. Meanwhile, he's up here trying to hustle Mason and sold the citizens of Mason's out after he came in as an attorney, which is definitely unethical, negotiating with the people that were trying to get the charter surrendered. The citizens sued the comptroller and some others because they were being threatened with termination of their city charter. But it turns out that the charter came from the state legislature, so the comptroller didn't even have any jurisdiction over the matter. And they were contesting the fact that some people who had represented them had stolen a considerable amount of money over a 20-year period. They wanted it back. Well, the comptroller wants them to raise their sales tax so they can pay for what got stolen from them and surrender their charter to Tipton County so Ford can get in. So Turner goes up there and says he's going to represent them. But what winds up happening is, without them realizing it, he signs off on granting what the comptroller wanted, which is we dismiss the lawsuit and agree to raise the money to pay off what got stolen. What kind of thing is that? You want that running the city? And by the way, he puts on a clown show when he talks. He starts talking about he and his wife first kissed over in the corners of Southland Mall when they were 14. Like, what the devil does that have to do with running this city? And Paul Young is down there trying to get more money for the hotel chain that he's got an inside interest with, and that development down there, and this thing out here at the fairgrounds. It's a city park, so somebody's nonprofit operating the city parks. I would bet has something to do with getting some of that money that's committed down there to putting in a new football stadium, taking the Mid-South Coliseum, which is not an arena, but yeah, it's an arena.
Yeah,
it ought to be converted back again and restored so you can have concerts down there. It ought to be a safe area so people don't have to worry about getting shot someplace. And we need to get rid of these kill zones. And as I said, I am brokering with the street gangs a public peace because even they're getting tired of the killing. This has gotten ridiculous around here.
Now, you did mention, restoration of the Coliseum. Let's talk about a lot of people in the city. They feel like, oh, it's nothing to do here, and a lot of people are leaving, going to other cities like Atlanta, going to other cities like Houston and Dallas. What's your take on that?
This ought to be the biggest city in the United States. It's got free electricity, just about. It's got the potential to have an enormous buildup on heavy and light industry. It is the distribution center for the North American continent. This place has a workforce that is underemployed. It's got plenty of colleges and universities around here. This should be Detroit for the 21st century, but Detroit as it ought to be, not as it is right now, which is pestilential. And the problem is there is a power vacuum in this city, like it is in most of the major cities in America. And that's what the gang leaders are saying. There's a power vacuum. There's nobody in charge. It used to be these folk run stuff, let me get in on the bottom, work my way up, Now all they have is gangs and dysfunction, and the bottom line is nobody knows how to do it, so there's no example, there's no training, there's no uplifting. So we have a power vacuum, and some of this violence we have in all of the big cities, including this one, is as a result. We have not had strong leadership in this country in a long time. We've got people with social agendas who get in place so they can set up programs supposedly to advance the agendas, but actually give somebody an opportunity to clown and take money out of the trough. We've got a situation here where, do you know how many people are enrolled in Lemoyne-Owen right now?
Honestly, don't.
Just at 600.
Wow.
That is ridiculous. We've got this major HBCU here in Memphis, and these clowns that run this place have allowed it to deteriorate as far as that. Nobody's talking about what to use it for.
I mean, that's a prestigious college here in this city, man.
Yeah, and like 600 students. They just brought in a new dean of admissions to try and recruit people because apparently the city, the board of education, nobody is doing anything about that. I've got a program I'm trying to work out, help out, and anybody listening, please respond. The Tuskegee Airmen, the Red Tails 332nd Fighter Group.
Okay.
When World War II hit, the Army wouldn't train them, so they got a private flight school set up down at Tuskegee Institute. That same flight school exists, and every 10 months they have 20 scholarships that they have where it's a full-time program, free room and board, free stipend, everything you need. And when you complete the 9-month program, which is a vigorous one, you wind up with a commercial airline pilot's license. You are certified to fly multi-engine aircraft, instrument flying. The Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps will accept that Army too in lieu of basic flight training. And you start out at 6 figures. You're supposed to be between 18 and 21, no criminal record, and have a C average, and your vision just needs to be correctable to 2040, not even 2020. Can't get anybody in there. For the last 3 classes, and this is nationwide, out of 20 slots, we've only had 3 applicants for the last 3 classes. We've had 9 kids come through, and all of them were white, by the way, not one black person. Nobody's interested. And instead of 60 people starting off with six figures, and I mean, think about it, that goes on for the next 40 years, and that soon ramp up to over 1 million, 7 figures a year. Think of what you can do with 35, 40, 50 million dollars you make as a salary. That's a hell of a thing.
I agree.
And you know what? I was trying to recruit to some of these kids out here in White Southland Mall, where I have my headquarters across from my church. Man, I don't want to be no pilot, man. I'll play me some ball, man. Well, what is the matter with you?
It almost sounds like aviation isn't promoted or isn't as respected in our community, but it's not promoted. You know, stuff like that isn't promoted. Everything is always music or sports or, you know.
What is wrong with us?
You know,
my day, you would have died, man. You gonna pay me to be the pilot, and I ain't even gotta have perfect eyes. Oh hell yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I have an ex-brother-in-law, and he's making 7+. Big 7 figures, and he is a Delta senior captain now after 35 years on an international flight flying a 777, you know, and he started off with a program like that his dad had to pay good money to get him in. This is free. You get the uniforms, you're going to New York to do it. This is the one that is led through the 332nd Fighter Group. The late husband of the woman that runs it, her name, she's no relation. Her last name is Brown too. Dolores Brown, Mrs. Dolores Brown. Her husband got in this when he was 17 in 1943. 17. He went through the same program. They put him in the 332nd. He wound up becoming an officer. He resigned after the war, and he used a GI Bill to send himself through school, and he retired as CEO for Kaiser Permanente with 19 hospitals he was CEO over. I mean, that's what you can do with this thing.
Yeah.
So what is wrong with us when we get offered this kind of opportunity that we are so, man, you're not interested, even though young ladies, sister, would you like, I don't want to fly no airplane.
It's not.
What do you want to do? I want to see if I can't start a boutique or something. Oh, God.
And that's what's promoted and marketed. You know, that's all they see on social media. You know, that's what's considered cool to a lot of us. And that's a problem. You know?
I mean, and it ain't even, it's not even a case of the competition is too heavy. There were only 3 applicants for 20 slots.
17 more to go.
And the Smithsonian Institution is doing the primary funding now, and they're threatening to cut the thing because nobody's interested. What has happened?
Yeah.
But you see, somebody in Memphis needs to at least start channeling kids into that. There is a special program operated out of UT Knoxville, and it has to do with the Ford plant. And they want to get kids out of high school for a full free ride in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, to work at this Ford plant. So they're trying to recruit high school students for this. But nobody locally is saying anything about it, and all of the students are coming from elsewhere in the state instead of right next to where they're going to be needed. Right. And by the way, Cadillac is going to be opening something up too. Mercedes, BMW, perhaps Tesla, all of these folk want to get in here. But the local, I say, Sean, look at that duck over there. Doesn't he have on gold? You know, watching in the Peabody. They aren't interested in this stuff, and it's gone to waste. Now, I've referred several kids to this, and every one of them has gotten in. It's so, I didn't even know about it. They haven't said anything about it in school. And by the way, why isn't the mayor going around and talking to the high school students and the junior high students and the elementary students? When I was a judge, I talked to every single elementary, junior high, or middle school and high school in this county at least 3 times. That was my business, because civic responsibility, get them enthused about running stuff. And why don't we do something where we have agreements with the police department and the youth So they have charges that they would otherwise have brought against them. They're held up to see if they go through vocational skill training, academic performance enhancement, and character development. Why can't we do stuff like taking that skating rink down on 3rd Street and turning it into a safe haven instead of a kill zone, and putting a police precinct in there to promote relations? You've got a situation here where you have constitutional carry. Why can't we use the police department at a range where the ordinary private citizens can go get the training and the instruction in the law and what the rules are? That would promote interaction between the department. Why don't we use the Second Amendment to set up urban militias? Not that thug stuff that you get with the Proud Boys and all that nonsense, but retired first responders, veterans, good citizens who don't mind coming in and patrolling with the police. Hey boy, come here. I know you. What you want, man? No. Earl, man, don't you know this dude? Yeah, his mama lives 2 blocks over. Look, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing out here? No, it ain't gonna be like that. Come on, you going home.
Yeah.
Man, you can't. Oh, we can't? And she put fatherhood back in the hood. Meanwhile, when we're talking about police, let's totally revise the police department. Now, there's this thing now where police came from slave catchers. No, that ain't how it happened. Came from Scotland Yard. There was a guy named Robert Peel. Sir Robert Peel. He founded Scotland Yard, and the police departments we have here got imported in the late 1830s and early 40s in New York, Boston, and places like that. And they're modeled on this aristocratic thing. And what we need to do is look at the Defense Department, where we've got a civilian commander-in-chief, the president, that would be the mayor, me. And I know how to command large units, have done it. Next thing, we get civilian heads of the departments. Pentagon, you've got civilian secretary of defense, Army, Navy, Air Force, subsecretaries over Marines, and all of this other stuff. We need that. So directors over uniform patrol, sex crimes, property, traffic, and all these things. And we need to set up communications nets so you can report into people that live where you are and go get directly to dispatch without having to go through 911. Get a familiarity going. Do something about the fact that too many young police are afraid to patrol the neighborhoods they grew up in, and too many more are part of that thug culture, and they're just hanging back watching out for the posse. I talked to some young cops a few weeks back, and one of them just said, "Judge, we just scared to go down there, man. It's dangerous." I said, "I tell you what, I'm going to be your boss, and if this old man goes down there, you damn sure are going to follow me, because if you want to keep your job, you will go."
Absolutely.
And see, we need to turn that into something where we boost the morale. Now, what's going wrong with it? Did you ever see that Clint Eastwood movie, what is it, Pork Chop Hill or something like that? Well, he was the slightly alcoholic Marine gunny, and he was getting ready to leave, but they put him over a recon platoon that had morale about that high, none at all.
Yeah.
And they thought they were all this and that, so he kicked butt, put everything in order, and then they wound up loving him, and they'd follow him to hell and back. But that's what you need, leadership. And right now, the chief we have doesn't have it, and I have some questions about why we have her as the first civil service chief in 41 years. See, we had a director over the intervening 5 decades, so could be fired, hired at the mayor's pleasure, so you had political responsiveness. Now you can't do anything with this particular person except for cause. Not only were there some women that had demonstrated the ability to command large units here in Memphis, why did they go get that one who got demoted and fired in Atlanta, then rehired because she was civil service? Then she went to Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. She was in the same kind of mess. And let's just put it this way, as bad a problem as we have with the subject, Why are some of those people that she was accused of protecting now doing federal time for, guess what? Manufacturing, production, and distribution of child pornography.
Wow.
Now, that needs to be explained. And also, why did they give her the money? You know, she's the highest paid person in the state outside of the governor. She gets paid more than the mayor does. So what did they do? Well, what they had to do that to attract her? You wanted to attract somebody that's under a cloud like that and the morale is zero. She gets here, and the word is she got a gun stolen 2 weeks after she was here, and it was used in crime 3.5 weeks later. Oh, but we know we have to have strict gun control, and we have to exempt Memphis from the constitutional carry. It ain't got nothing to do with guns. They don't get up and go shoot somebody. It's the lack of character. You don't have any home training around here. Nobody's trying to teach these kids anything.
No accountability either.
And I tell you what, we need to do something about this. I went to a high school. The principal was really trying. And we were taking a tour of the campus. And I said, Principal, you let that happen? And there was a young woman, a girl, leaning up against the wall of a bungalow. She had on booty shorts with her butt cheeks out. She didn't have a bad figure, some little flimsy sandals, a tie halter, a belly ring, big hoop earrings, and the braids. He said, Judge, that's not a student, that's a teacher. We can't talk about their dress codes. So, oh, hell no. See, that kind of thing is going on. It's their right to do it, but I look at something too, well, I won't even touch on that. That's just more icing on a rotten cupcake. But
could we, talk about your barbecue sauce before we get out of here?
Oh yeah,
yeah,
JJBBBQ.com got good news. It's going to be on sale at 17 Kroger's in the Memphis area and 59 in the Delta area, which includes Atlanta. It's good stuff. Try it, order it. You can get the 3-pack, most economical on the shipping. It costs the same for a 3-pack as for one. And if you're commercial, you can get it in the gallon sizes, and we've got some restaurants that have tried it and say, oh yeah, the customers were raving over it. We want to do that. So it's summertime, get your Q on, and that's JJBBBQ.com. But I'm into two things, service and sauce.
I love it. Now, of course, you also got some commercials coming soon with Tiffany Haddish, right?
She's an investor in this.
Okay.
We also have chicken links, raw and smoked, hot and mild, and they're put up by the only female black-owned meat packing plant in California. And we're collaborating with another woman. Her name is Michelle Duke. She has Poppy's Bourbon. She's got a distillery, second largest one run by a female in America. And the formula is based on something her grandfather, known as Poppy, from down here in Mississippi, put together. He was a moonshiner. Stuff is smooth. I rate it better than Jack Black, if you like that. So it's real smooth, goes down nicely. So, we are trying to push the ladies and protect them. We're trying to promote the manhood around here to take charge and make the place safe. And that's what we do, though some people seem to get offended at that idea.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember down here, we had a function last year I wasn't invited to, but I crashed some of the little, I'm going to try and improve the downtown skyline, and it reminds me of so-and-so, and I think we need to improve stuff because my wife and I, we've been together since we've been 14, etc., etc., etc. Or it's time for the guys to get out of the race so a woman can run. Well, okay, fine. Are you going to get out of the race, Judge Brown? No, I'm not. And it's a dangerous place, and to do what I think is necessary as a mayor, you're going to have to go some places that expose you to some high physical danger. So some of those places are dangerous and women don't need to be there right now. So they got all upset. It was the Young Democrats. I think there were about 23 of them there and about 150 other people who were applauding. They got upset with that. But less than 24 hours later, guess what happened? That's when that young lady out here got kidnapped, raped, tortured, and brutally murdered at the University of Memphis. It wasn't even 24 hours. And what are you going to do in a town like this when you just get rampant refusal to address the problem because it's not going away? You see, what I tell people is you can't move away from this problem in Memphis or any other urban area in America because people have cars and they drive. So you think you're in a slick location, but they can come to where you are. Although it seems Collierville, Germantown, and such like, it doesn't happen, and you know it doesn't happen. You know, nobody gets their cars broken into in Collierville, and so you might want to ask why. Oh, by the way, found out the latest little scam is that, not scam, but little gambit is, you get the 13, 14-year-olds, they're kind of small, so you bust out the back of an SUV, they can climb through the back window without setting off the alarm, and they can go do what they want. They're looking for guns and not so much anything else. You know those signs that say no guns allowed, you know? Well, people drive up and they see that and say, oh wow, I can't take my stuff in there. So if they're in an SUV, there's nowhere to put it, but they put it in the glove compartment of the center console, or if you got another car with a trunk, you don't want anybody saying, oh, you put a pistol in there, let's go jimmy the trunk, you know. They put it in the glove compartment, so they bust out the driver's side window, jimmy the glove compartment and center console looking for guns, not so much money or anything else. And that's become a problem, which is why so many car burglaries have occurred. And you notice they're driving Infinities, right?
That's true. Kills, Infinities, all of it.
Yeah, but mostly Infinities. Why they're driving Infinities is some clown put on the net how to hotwire an Infinity.
Wow.
So they follow the instruction manual. But there's also another one that was out there, and it was an instruction manual on how to hack our voting machines, the D-ball voting machines. California put it out because they didn't want anybody else to use the things. And from 2006 all the way up to the present, the Justice Department regularly has issued a report saying there hasn't been a fair election since 2000 in Shelby County because the machines are hacked. They were advertised as having a unique feature, which is you can find out the total vote count from any one machine for the whole system. So if you can access the whole system from one machine, you can corrupt it. So what California shows is how you use a cell phone to type out a text using the formula to any third person. You don't send it, you just keep it. When you walk up, you got within 5 feet of the machine, hit send, now you own that machine. 10 minutes you own the precinct, and in 45 minutes to an hour you own the whole system. And what you do is something called hack for what they call a differential vote count. In other words, between candidate A and candidate B, you pick the percentage you want your person to win by, let's say 54.6%, and every time candidate B gets 100 votes, you take 11 of them or 11.1 away and you give it to the other guy. So what is the giveaway is when for write-in votes you have less than a whole person. You might have 17.75 votes for. You can't have 3/4 of a vote. You know, it's a giveaway.
Yeah.
So you needed the encryption code, which I published every few months, just to make sure it was out there so the corruption would be apparent. And you needed the office codes, which the election commission publishes, and each candidate had a code, so that was published. Now what would happen is when you got into the machines, you would find the machines do not have the names internalized, they have the candidate number. So you have 2 candidates for an office, and you have 5 numbers in there, and you might have 20,000 going to 3 non-existent candidates, and they're not write-ins. So you can tell the hack. And as a matter of fact, in 2008, the feds put up the money to replace every machine. But our county commission voted against it all the way up until somebody threatened to sue them. And then for November 2020, we had the first use throughout the county of the machines for the 2020 election. Not 2020, 2022 election cycle. And earlier, for the year before, we had them used in Cordova to see how they would run. Now, there is a possibility to hack them because it's a 2-step voting process. You have an election. Do you want to use the computer or do you want to do it by hand? If you do it by hand, you deal with the card, mark it, then you have to put the card in a machine before you leave. If you use the computer, you go use the computer, and then when you get through, it's easier to go vote that way, and then you say, okay, what am I going to do next? It says hit print. Warning, when you hit print, you cannot undo your selections. So it kicks out the ballot that it prints, but most people don't look. And I have a sneaking suspicion that's where it is potentially vulnerable to hacking again, because they kept these things for 18 months before they used them. I'm wondering if they were learning how to get around it. So what happens is if you get your ballot out of the machine and you say, wait a minute, that's not how I voted, and you got a whole lot of hassle to go through. And then in the second event, even if you don't find a discrepancy, you still have to take that card that the computer kicks out and put it in the second machine if you want your vote counted. It's clumsy, but I would suggest, if you can, do it where you fill it in yourself so there is no opportunity for the hack to occur without it being obvious through the second machine, and take a picture of it to record what you did. Now, remember, the feds put the money up in 2008. That's 15 years ago. Now the county commission is saying they have to raise sales taxes to pay for the machines that got paid for 15 years ago. Where's the money? See, there's some stuff that needs to be brought to light in this county, because if it wasn't so damn corrupt, we would have a lot of available funds. And if these folk would get up off of their behinds and go investigate what's going on, it would be okay. One of the problems that I've noted in terms of dealing with some of the people that occupy these offices is they don't know anything about them. They have no background in governance, management, executive functions, or any of that kind of thing. They just wanted it, so they get there and they're termed out by the time they learn what they were supposed to be doing. Same thing with the mayor's office. If you're going to be the mayor of this city, you need to hit the ground running with a plan that you don't need to discover once you get in. So I have a plan.
You got a plan. Let's talk about early voting as well as the actual October 5th. That's the actual election day, right?
Yes, October 5th is the actual election day. The early voting starts September 15th, and it runs through September 30th. That's the easy one. You can just take your time, walk in. There's never any crowds. You can pick where you want to go on the way to the grocery store, coming home from work. It's probably most convenient. So do that, and you avoid all of the election day hassle where all of the people get paid to be out there. They don't know what they're doing. And instead of hustling, they're sitting down, fanning themselves. And you get handed somebody's sample ballot with some pictures on it. You don't know who these people are, and you vote for whatever, who says this, congressman says that. By the way, we need a new congressman, and I'll tell you this, I don't think it needs to be Mayor Harris. I think he's going to have some problems shortly, but Congressman Cohen represents a 92% black district. For 18 years, his showpiece item of legislation is a binding resolution on the congressional cafeteria to use only paper straws.
I was trying to hold it. That's all.
That's all.
Wow.
Now, that's what you get. So is that what we want? And by the way, speaking of that, we had that Tyree Nichols thing where we had Mrs. Imhoff, the vice president. Wonder why she doesn't like to be Mrs. Nancy Pelosi, Mrs. Sarah Palin, Mrs. Gloria, Mrs. Feinstein, and all of this, Mrs. Waters, but it's Miss Harris rather than Mrs. Imhoff. And then we had chicken-eating Al Sharpton came in and pimped us all off again. He talked about his new book. Then we had Ben Crump, and then we had our chief of police trying to concede liability. Makes me wonder about that. The mayor was trying to concede liability, and then when they were talking about that, there's the story that the streets know. We talked about that. But then we get this accusation that is somehow or another racist when you get all of the actors involved black, and then you get this little thing. I think the stats are more than 65% of the police department's black. The chief is a black female. The sheriff is a black male. The leadership cadre for the sheriff's department and the police department is 80% black. 60% of the criminal court judges are black and female. Let's see, the jury pool sometimes is as high as 70% black. So exactly where does the racism come in? Okay, Amy Wire, yeah, but she was more corrupt than anything else. And let's see, they had, now we got a new Democratic district attorney. Fortunately, we got finally a legitimate judge down at juvenile court, Judge Tariq Sugarman. We had a judge in place from 1963 to 2006, the late Kenneth Turner, who had an interesting educational background. Highest grade he'd ever finished was the 5th grade, so that was the judge. And he privatized everything because he was not permitted to hear cases. It's an interesting constitutional problem, since the Tennessee Constitution says a citizen is entitled to have his matter tried by an elected judge, but the elected judge couldn't try anything because the Supreme Court said you only finished the 5th grade, you don't have the education to understand the arguments of counsel, which would deprive somebody of the right to an attorney, so you can't hear it. So he hired all these referees and magistrates, which I think is corrupt, because for the circuit, chancery, and criminal courts, they have referees and magistrates, but every single judge has to approve them. So you get somebody that's not even a state level judge, just a municipal judge, and 5th grade education, so he got to unilaterally pick referees and magistrates with the same authority and paid the same as the ones that sat in serious courts of record that had to be approved by every judge in the county. Yeah, nice. And then there are some accounts down there that are questionable. One other thing, since we're talking about accounts, first Tennessee, for a long time benefited from all of the city cash deposits. American banks have a requirement put on them where their accounts have to be backed up by a certain percentage of cash. Well, if the city and all of its agencies and the counties and everything else and the state agencies that are local are putting all their cash in one bank, they have a very high account level. But that account level was not being used for ordinary people to set up small businesses and mortgages and stuff like that. It was for the privileged who got the zoning variances and got paid to build something, paid for the materials and paid to operate it, and supposedly gives us a non-existent, zeroed out percentage of a net. So what we need is to take our money out of First Horizon and start spreading it around so we can encourage credit unions. For example, the churches have a lot of cash, supposedly, so rather than buying the preacher a new car and his wife a fur coat, they might want to put some of that in a credit union that would have cash deposited by the city and alter the prospects of small businessmen and women in the city. Also the mortgages, and the thing right now, it's kind of hard to get into a first-time home ownership situation, since without any track record on credit, you're likely to get stuck on the bad side of 7.5% fixed, where the best you can get is about 6.5% on a fixed mortgage, and that's not good for people who want to upgrade to the second tier of houses, because typically on that level what you're doing is you're relying on the sale of one to get your down payment squared away and your expenses on the second one, but you're jumping from perhaps a low mortgage 4.5% fixed, you're jumping up, if you have good credit, to 6.5 or 7, which is still ruinous. So people who have properties that they have a great deal of equity in find that if they get a new home, they can make ends meet if they rent the property. But first, second time buyers, they don't have that luxury, so something needs to be done to get people a stake in their communities. There are all kinds of things people can do that these clowns never think about, and I call them clowns because it looks like a circus show.
Man, we got plenty more that we could talk about, but hey, we just about out of time. Go ahead, give all your social media as well as your website. That way people, if they want to be a part of what you're doing, if they want to donate, go ahead, let them know.
Okay, if you want the service bit, it's JJB 2023, Judge Joe Brown in 2023. It's just the initials, JJB 2023. And the sauce thing is JJBBBQ.com. Cash App, $ Judge Joe Brown 2023. Now, we've got a chant that some folk made up, JJB in 2023.
Okay.
JJB, etc. Send Brown downtown, take back your town. I like that. It resonates. And it's getting around the total block that you get from mainstream media, who mentions all of the other candidates and significantly refuses to mention my name. My usual response when people say, Judge, are you running for mayor? Is this a rumor or is this true? Yeah, I'm running here. I have a car. Wow! You know, they get excited because otherwise I wasn't even going to come out and vote. Why vote? Same old ideas, do it the same way. And as Einstein said, keep doing something the same way with the same negative result over and over again, and that's a sign of insanity.
Insanity, correct. But hey, like I say, it's been an amazing time right here on Brink Radio. I gotta say thank you for being a guest on the show. It really means a lot. And you guys make sure y'all get out there and vote. Exercise your right to vote. Please do that. With that being said, now back to more Brink Radio.